It's so nice to see so many familiar faces and some new ones as well. I'm Barb Anthony. I'm the one of the co-founders and the executive director of NOWSA, the Northeast Ohio Women's Sports Alliance. On behalf of my co-founder, Elise Bigley, raise your hand, Elise. She's over there. And our board of directors and volunteers, advisors, I welcome you this evening to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the passage of Title IX, the law that was passed and signed into law on June 23rd. Today is the day, 50th anniversary, 1972. Has quite evolved over time, encountered barriers, voices of dissent, as well as support and growth, similar to the experiences of girls and women throughout the same time. Many of the conversations that we have had about the experience of girls and women in sport often bring about great ideas for change, hopes for advocacy, desires for more people that would do something to address the challenges that exist, particularly for the adult athlete. The conversation usually ends with someone saying something like, you know, someone should really do something about that. So we did. That's why we created this organization, because it's not enough to just talk about it. We decided we had to do something and that we could be those people. So I am honored to represent NOWSA and our 24 partners who provide inclusive programs for adults through various sport and recreational activities in this region. These adult athletes are just like you and me, mothers, professionals, students, colleagues, and neighbors. While we speak largely about sports this evening, it would be disingenuous to say that it is only about sports. We must acknowledge that equity and access to resources and opportunities are not isolated to this space. These issues are embedded in culture and society that impact all of us. Particular attention and support and protections must be given to communities and people experiencing imposed socioeconomic, racial, and gender disparities. We founded this organization to assist our partners by providing consolidated and comprehensive support, promotion, and resources to help reduce those barriers to participation and increase a sense of community. Hopefully, because of this event, you will learn about a sport or a team that exists for women in this area and find a way to support them. Become a spectator and fan, donate to their team, and share with them on your social networks and media. Be intentional, do something. Now I'd like to take a moment to thank some folks who helped us put this event together. Specifically, I'd like to recognize NOWSA's Elise Bigley, Elizabeth Emery, and Lena Harris for their help in planning this event. All of us are volunteers, and every single person who has built NOWSA from the ground up has done it in their spare time and on their own dime, so thank you. To the Spectrum team for their sponsorship and collaboration and support. This wouldn't happen without your help and sponsorship, so thank you. This is terrific, and I'm really happy to see so many people here. To Cleveland State University, CSU Athletics, and Dr. Rob Kleinman, Faculty Athletics Representative. Dr. Kleinman, can you raise your hand? He's been one of our very early supporters, and he would like me to point out the murals on the back wall of great importance and some good history if you'd like to look them up. I'm sure he'd be thrilled. So I'd also like to thank Chris Renison and the Department of Instructional Technology and Distance Learning for their high level of professional support. They have helped us set up the AV and the live stream, so thank you so much to that department. And most especially to you, our guests, our panelists, Coach Denise Gorski, Darlene Gordon, Deshara Turner, and Tracy Hall Yarbrough, and those joining us via live stream. Thank you for being here to celebrate this notable time in history. I invite you to join the conversation that propels us forward another 50 years. Please join me in welcoming Sandra Williams, Director, Government Affairs with Charter, who will introduce our next guest speakers.
Appreciate that. My name is Sandra Williams, and I'm very excited to be here tonight. I want to welcome you all to this very special event that we have been looking forward to for a very long time. I'm excited to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Title IX, especially with our esteemed panel. I want to acknowledge the elected officials in the room. We have Representative Kent Smith. Please stand up. We have we have State Senator Dale Martin, our newest state senator who represents Cleveland State University. We have Senators Nikki Antonio. And we have Councilman Richard Starr, and this is his ward in Ward 5. Spectrum is committed to improving communities and impacting lives where our customers live and work. We are proud to serve more than 1,780 communities across the state of Ohio and employ more than 7,200 citizens. We are a vital part of the communities we serve and believe it is important to be connected to the neighborhoods and people who make up the fabric of our communities. Our goal is to be more than a corporate citizen. We strive to make the lives of people better through technology and, more importantly now, closing the digital divide. And with that, I'd like to ask Barb to come back up because we have a special presentation for you. And any other member of NAUSA that would like to come up, please come up at this time. So because we want to be a great community partner in all the great work you all are doing and volunteering to make sure that women are recognized in sports across Northeast Ohio, we would like to present a check to you for $2,500 just to give a little bit to the work you're doing. We try to make sure that we support people doing great work, so please keep us connected with your organization, and we will be more than happy to perhaps do more, maybe later if my boss allows that over there, Jason. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Joining us today to provide remarks will be State Senator Nikki Antonio and Councilman Starr. If you guys could start making your way to the podium, that would be appreciated. Councilman Starr was just elected to office last year, and he serves in the Ward 5 community. He spent 14 years working at the Boys and Girls Club of Northeast Ohio. One of his main focuses was the Recreation and Sports Department for the Boys and Girls Club of Northeast Ohio. His focus in the city of Cleveland, youth, which he's been doing for a very long time, employment, housing, and education. Senator Nikki Antonio represents the 23rd Senate District, and as of next year, she will be representing the 21st Senate District in her new position with the new maps. She has been a dedicated champion of workers' rights, high-quality education, local governments, equal rights for women and the LGBT community, healthcare for all, and fighting the opioid crisis. Would you guys please come up and say a few words?
Well, good evening. How are you? This is fun.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So my name's Nikki Antonio, and as Sandra said, I'm the state senator for District 23. A lot has happened with our districts. It will continue to be Senate District 23. It's just going to have some pieces of 21 and in it in the new district. We're going to work together going forward. I was very excited to be asked to come and say a few words just to welcome you to my alma mater. We love Cleveland State. And also to celebrate 50 years of Title IX. As a mom, I know that my daughters had offerings available to them, opportunities that I didn't have when I was a kid, couldn't even imagine. But I was a young girl who was outraged by the fact that there were all these inequities for girls. And so now going forward, what an amazing difference Title IX has made in the lives of young women and girls to reach their fullest potential, starting with sports and all of the things that sports teaches them and all of the opportunities that it gives them that they can't even imagine. Never would have dreamed in a million years, but for participating in sports. So thanks for being here. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to hearing from the panel tonight, and am very honored to be here. Thank you.
Wow, tough act to follow, right? I think it's important to highlight. I have a bachelor's degree, sports management from Baldwin Wallace. So please, my professors, if they're watching, I'm gonna hold this down for 2 seconds. What I mean by that is I grew up playing for sports. Sports saved my life, and I am the second oldest of 6 children, 4 boys, 2 girls. So if I was afforded the opportunity to play sports to change my life, why does it have to be different for my sisters or my siblings like that? So Title IX, we need to celebrate 50 years of improvement, but we also got to acknowledge that there's things that needs to change. Something that I spoke about earlier in a conversation with Director Williams, we talked about the fact that everyone says equal, but when you look at professional sports, there's not equality in that. And what I mean by that is, if we're falling under a professional industry such as the NBA, and you have the WNBA under that umbrella, it shouldn't be revenue generated and salaries paid based off the revenue that's generated from the WNBA. We need to come together and change some policies and fight for the equity piece that we need and equality for women. When you think about 1972, think about that time period. Some of us was not there. I wasn't either. But when you look at it, gender, equity in education, and civil rights was something that was really, really hurt and was not right. So what I look to do as a person in politics is to learn more and figure out how we can all work together to be the change that we wish to see. So let's celebrate, let's learn, but also check out ESPN Sports Center. They ran a series last night. I was on the couch and I was like, yo, let me cut this up and let me pay attention, because it was really good to just hear the lessons that women had to go through. And sports still today is making an impact in our lives, but we need to make sure we work together to bring peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I couldn't have said it better, and I think my kids always hear the phrase equal and fair are not the same, and they hate it, but it's true, and it's true here, and it's true everywhere. People need to get what they need and not always get the same, because it's not the same. So thank you so much for your remarks. Thank you all for being here. I am very excited and really pleased that we are able to preview actually part of that docuseries, 37 Words, a 4-part docuseries presented by ESPN that highlights the history and future of the impact of Title IX. So enjoy this short clip. And while the screens come down, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our moderator for the panel, Elizabeth Emery. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Elizabeth, our moderator for this evening's panel. Elizabeth Emery is a former professional athlete who has been interested and involved in sports since before the passage of Title IX. In the 90s, she raced bicycles professionally, traveling all over the country and the world. She is a U.S. national time trial champion, a gold medalist in the Pan American Games and the Pan American Championships, and won the Tour of Japan. She also placed 5th for Team USA in the Time Trial World Championships. Elizabeth now hosts and produces the podcast Hear Her Sports, a podcast for active, adventurous women who love hearing stories from other active and adventurous women and the awesome things they do. Elizabeth is still competitively active in cycling and cross-country skiing, and will talk to anyone about the importance of strength training for women. We are also incredibly honored that she is our board president for the Northeast Ohio Women's Sports Alliance. So please join me after this 1-minute video and welcome our panelists as well as Elizabeth Emery to the stage. Enjoy.
What is Title IX? At first mention, many people think Title IX is about equity for women and girl athletes at federally funded schools. That's true, but there's more to this monumental piece of civil rights legislation. Let's begin with the entire name of the law, Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972. It's 37 words, change the game.
No person in the United States
shall, on the basis of sex,
be excluded from
participation in,
be denied the benefits of,
or be subjected to
discrimination
under any education program
or activity receiving
federal financial assistance.
So as you see, it covers a lot. Absolutely athletics, but also bans discrimination against LGBTQ plus students who are pregnant or parenting, and students who experience sexual harassment or violence. The law also applies to admissions, recruitment, financial aid, and disciplinary action. There have been amendments, so Title IX looks a little different than it did in 1972. But at its heart, it remains the same. Gender discrimination in federally funded education is against the law. And this year, Title IX is 50.
Careful of those stones you're throwing, that's what keeps me going. I keep on turning dust to diamonds. I'll make sure that this rust keeps shining, no matter the price I pay.
I want to say that in the months leading up to this anniversary, I thought a lot about Title IX. And I'll have to be honest that I had a lot of reservations. I had mixed feelings about Title IX. As has been said before already tonight, yes, let's celebrate. This is a great thing. This is a great law that is on the books, but also there is so much work to be done. And I was focusing for many months on the work that needed to be done. And I'm really grateful, actually, for all of this time and all of this celebration, because during that time, I discovered a community of other women and of other people who also wanted to celebrate, but also were really recognizing all the work that needed to be done. And as a result, I have discovered there are tons of women out there who are my community, and it's really exciting to have discovered them and to be talking to them. And here we are tonight with this incredible, incredible panel and doing the same thing. We're establishing community. And that is certainly what I hope that everybody gets here tonight, is learning from other people, meeting other sporty women, and establishing a great community that we can all take forward. And tonight, we are not going to be talking about details, legal details of Title IX. What we're here to do today is to hear stories from these women, hear their experiences, and learn from those experiences. The stories of women deserve to be heard. They are important to be heard. And it is important to remember our history and know where we're going forward. So that's what we're here to do tonight. And I want to take a moment before I introduce the panelists to really thank Spectrum for taking this opportunity to support women in sports. One of the big concerns these days in women in sports is that of sports media coverage, only 4% is about women. And that is still true today. It's 4 to 5, I'll give them 5. But for me, that amount is essentially 0. So it is a huge thing that Spectrum is taking this moment to support women in sports and saying they care about that as a media company. So I'm really grateful for them for doing that. So now I want to introduce the panel. You should all have a program. You can read more about them, but at the end, we have Denise Gorski, and she has worked in sports as a coach, as an athletic director, as a physical education teacher. And her experience is wonderful because it gives such a broad spectrum of what women need in sports. So I'm really excited that she is here on the panel, and she has a broad overview of sports and athletes in the physical education department. And her success is really evident because she has had incredible athletes who have been under her, coached under her. It was 1988, right? Yeah, in 1988, Lori Gomez-Hennes was one of the top runners in the nation. And I really love particularly that her sports philosophy, her coaching philosophy really stresses the individual, not the success or objective success, but the most success that that individual can get. So I'm excited that she is here. And then Tracy Hall Yarbrough played basketball in high school and college in the years shortly after Title IX passed, when athletic scholarships were first made available to women. She earned a full scholarship to OSU and through amazing basketball playing in high school. At OSU, she played under the coaching of the very, very successful Tara Vanderveer, so I'm hoping we're going to hear a little bit about that, because she is still coaching at Stanford today. The first season of the WNBA was in 1997, so this was not an option that was available to her right out of college. Her career is stellar by any metric at all and will hold up long term, and that is indicated by the fact that OSU has retired her number 44 jersey. And then next is Deshara Turner, and she is our youngster of the panel. And we're all super excited about it because she is our hope for the future. She is our future. And, you know, she is 3 years away from voting age, so she really, truly is our future. And she has a long history already of fighting for social justice and equity, both in sport and out. So that is super inspiring and also encouraging, again, because she is the future. And because of her strength as a leader now, In the future, I know as her success continues that we will be able to count her in the statistic that 94% of C-suite women have played sports in college. And then Darlene Gordon is all about leadership, and like many women in executive roles in sports, is one of the few women in the field. As an AD in college sports, she has had first-hand experience figuring out issues of compliance and best practices for the women athletes in her school. Gordon is also an entrepreneur. As the president of KGG consulting firm, clients included Ohio Rehabilitation Service Commission, Workers' Compensation, Cleveland Browns, Cleveland African American Museum, National Basketball Players Association, and Continental Hotels. She is a strong advocate for women in leadership, developing their own style instead of mimicking what is already existing in men's leadership. So I'm excited to have her here today as well. So as I mentioned, I really like history. And so we are going to start with a little bit of history, and we're going to start with you, Tracy. Could you just describe what it was like when you were in high school playing at Cleveland Heights High?
Well, when I was first playing at Cleveland Heights High School, there wasn't a lot of fans initially that started to watch our games as far as the women's team is concerned, the girls' team. And as I began to play and they began to see my talent over the years, more and more people began to show up for the games, you know. So nowadays, sometimes you look at some arenas and you don't have a lot of women at a lot of fans at the girls' games. But starting back then when I was in high school, I remember times when we were trying to get our time for basketball, you know, after practice, you know. A lot of times it was a matter of, do the boys always practice after school and we have to practice at 6:30 or 7? And I remember that was a big thing for us to maybe be able to alternate those times, for practice at those times. So over the course of the years in high school and watching the teams go, it was a great experience.
What about games, like competitions? Did you play at the same times? Did you play at good times for spectators?
I think that it's the times that they play today are probably the times that they played with us back then. I think that we played on Saturdays and we played maybe on Thursdays. I think the boys teams had the prime spot on a Friday night. I think that creates a little bit of a problem with people being able to get fan support. You know, students coming to the game on Saturday may be a little bit more difficult than them coming to the game on a Friday night. So that was something that, I think that if the times were a little bit different, that would be allow women to have a little bit more basketball support during that time, if it was maybe at a time during school time, and then we can do that.
Do you remember when you were in high school recognizing the inequality or these issues, or is this just in retrospect?
I think it's just in retrospect. I think during that time, I don't know if I thought that much about it, other than the practices, the times, and the fan support. I was kind of in my own world, wanted to do what we could do for Cleveland Heights and at that time. But I don't know if I really thought about what opportunities were there. I did not go to my first college basketball game, girls basketball game, until like maybe my high school career. One of the coaches there took me to my first high school game. I didn't even realize or even think about playing at the next level. So if it wasn't for her, I don't know if I would have even thought about playing basketball after high school. It wasn't something that the coaches talked about. It wasn't something that other people talked about. I didn't know a lot of people that had the opportunity to do that. So as a girl playing basketball, I don't even know if I thought about that being an opportunity for me. Had it not been for this young person that, this trainer, my coach, Lisa Gilbert, that told me, hey, you can do this, and took me to a game and helped me put my name out there for a basketball scholarship, I don't know if I would have been where I was today. It wasn't like I went to a lot of basketball camps like they have now. Now you have all type of basketball camps in AAU. It was really the effort of this one particular person that knew things, she was older, knew things about it, was an athlete involved in sports, that gave me the opportunity to say, hey, you can really do this at the next level. Let's try to get your name out here. Let's do this for schools. And if it wasn't for her, I don't know if I would have been able to, really be out there getting a scholarship at that time.
That's pretty exceptional of her.
It was really wonderful.
Deshara, let's switch to you. What's it been like for you at Cleveland Heights playing softball? She's a softball player.
So playing softball at Cleveland Heights, it's kind of like what Tracy said. You don't see many fans at the women's sports games. Usually it's like basketball gets more of the attention. And then when it shifts to like the spring sports, it's usually track. We don't get many people that come to our softball games. Like we usually get family or some students and teachers. But then when it's like the playoff season, that's when people start coming out a lot more because then they want to see us advance. We tend to work a little bit with the boys though. I have some friends who are either on the freshman team or the JV or the varsity, and we all work together. Like we communicate and stuff about like how we maneuver through the games, how we maneuver through practice, and usually after practice during the winter season, because that's when we condition. Our practice usually is from late at night to 8 to 10 because we take 2 hours to practice. But the conditioning and hitting off the tee and running bases, we usually operate late because the basketball and football is usually in the wrestling room or they're in the aux gym or the competition gym. So they get those like the early hours after school and we have to come back late at night to practice. And then throughout all the conditioning, we don't really, have that time to usually to do the softball things that we usually do, like practice our little scrimmage games against each other. But then during the spring, when we get outside and it's nice, we practice with each other, we play with each other, we make jokes with our coach. When we usually run bases, we always tease each other like, oh, you can't get this, you can't get me, that's what's up. And then our coach, he used to be in the Marine Corps. And so before his second knee replacement surgery, he would always run so slow and we would always tag him out and we would go like, oh, we got you, Sully. And then he would go like, you, and then always at senior night, he always gets emotional with the speeches. And he goes like, you girls, I love you so much because you're like my daughters and we love you so much. And we always appreciated Sully for that because he always acknowledged us as not only his sports members, but like family, because that's kind of like what it's like for our softball team. We consider each other family, pretty much.
Thank you. I want to step back one step. Why do we care even about sports? And I'm going to start with you, Denise. Like, why is this important? Why, it's just a game.
Well, since I was in high school, which I'm probably the oldest one on the panel here, I went to Cuyahoga Falls High School from 1970 to 1973. I played 3 sports: volleyball, which was really more of an intramural sport, basketball, and softball. And at that time, we had 4 women's sports and 11 men's sports. We also played in the elementary school gym for our games. And, it was at that time, as Title IX was just beginning, I don't think the magnitude was really hitting, obviously, for me yet. But as I went on to college and chose to major in physical education and strive to become a coach and was a 3-sport coach at certain times of my career, I realized that not only my teaching, but coaching can give so much to so many, whether it's male or females, but it can really lay the groundwork for obviously your life. The leadership skills that you learn, the ability to get around or be around others and be able to mutually respect each other, to be in competition, but be in fair competition with each other. You're making each other better. You're not competing against each other necessarily. You could teach all of those things in coaching. And that was what was most important to me, to make an effect on young ladies. And my last 10 years of track, I was also coaching young men in men's track as well. But it was to, make an effect on them that they would learn these life lessons that they could use forever to better themselves for their career ahead of them. And so it was a foundation of a lot of my life, and I feel the success of my life and my athletes as well.
I always feel it's necessary when I'm with a group of women who are athletes to ask, and I want to ask you again, Denise, because you have had a broad spectrum of experience, particularly with physical education. Not everyone likes sports. So as a physical education teacher, what did you think was the benefit for those who didn't like sports as much?
Well, when I taught physical education, it was the boys, were always with the men teachers, and the girls were with the female teachers. And then we did go co-ed. It wasn't right after Title IX was passed. It wasn't even in the 80s. It was probably in the early 90s that myself and my department, we put together a way that the students could choose what they wanted to take. So rather than maybe one teacher teaching basketball for 8 weeks because that was a sport that they liked, or someone, and I nothing against basketball, Tracy, or someone teaching dance for a whole semester, and not that that's bad either, but we felt that it was the total person that we needed to develop. So we put together an elective program where we would offer the students 3 or 4 different subjects to choose from. One would be a lifetime sport, one would be a team sport, one would be a strength training unit, and another one might be an aerobic unit, a nutrition unit, and they would actually choose what they wanted to do for the first, we went usually in 3-week units, and then they would pick again to be in an activity that was more towards their interest. And it really improved the amount of, especially, and I hate to see this, on the girls' side, who sometimes would not dress in the early, well, I started teaching in the late 70s, and we did have young ladies who, they didn't want to change, they didn't want to be participating, so we needed to change our direction so that we were giving them what they needed. There were those few boys too, but for the most part, we feel that with changing that program, it really benefited male and female athletes. And our dress problem dropped tremendously. The enthusiasm was there for those who could go in the activities and really partake in what was to their benefit, but also gave them an ability to have a mixture of things that could help them.
Of course, yeah.
Just speaking a little bit of what Denise has said, I think the importance of coaching, I think coaches have a lot to do with athletes, right? I think that the coaches that I benefited the most from were people that can tell me, hey, I expect you to get out there and give me 25 rebounds and 30 points. Okay, can you do that? Knowing it might not be obtainable, but they were going to strive to make me do that. It's one thing that she said that's very important that I could not even picture, like not having boys and girls play sports together. When I was in middle school, if I just had to play with the girls, I don't think I would have developed to be the athlete that I was. I had the ability to play all the things that you do in gym class or whatever, where I can mingle, and then that competitiveness, I'm going to do more jumping jacks, I'm going to do more pull-ups than you, I'm going to do this. That competitiveness was a drive that made me get better. All through my basketball career, I played against guys. I played with the boys up until maybe 7 years ago when I stopped playing basketball. I'm the only female in the court. And when I sit there and think about where I am now because of that, it means a lot. So I'm thinking when she said something about, hey, the boys played with the boys and did this and the girls played with that, I couldn't even imagine doing that, because I think had that been the situation that I was in, I would not have been the player that I am today.
He's helping already. The question of what sports means, for me, it's a global perspective, in the sense that if you take a look of what sports has impacted on society, it is huge. Major changes in our society happen through sports. When you think about civil rights, when you think about the changes because of Title IX, all came through sport. And sport as a whole has brought our country together on a variety of issues when it came to World War I, World War II, sport was important in terms of bringing society together. Then you look at as recent as 9/11, how important it was when baseball and football came together and started bringing us back into feeling normal again. And then, of course, the pandemic. Sport did all of that for us. And the impact of that is tremendous. Now, I agree with all the ladies when they're talking about some of the individual things that have happened, because one of the reasons why I wanted to be in sport is because of the individual things that you're talking about. But it also has the ability to make an extreme impact on society and change things for the better. And for me, there's nothing better than that. Sport does that for people.
So as we heard, Title IX is not only sports. It in fact was not even started because of sports. It just happened to impact sports quite a bit. And this panel is sports specific, but I don't want to ignore the fact that it doesn't cover all this other stuff. So Dashara, can you tell us about your story with Title IX at school?
Basically, starting now in the middle of the school year, after winter break, they officially told us what Title IX was by giving us they put us in an assembly and they had a presentation and they told us what Title IX was. And everyone was asking questions like, why weren't we told about this in the beginning of the year? Because this could be something important. And so when everybody started, like the people who really actually cared, when they started doing more research about it and trying to understand what it was, they were asking more and more questions. And then it got to a point where at one of our school board meetings, they had the Title IX coordinators for our district come and talk about themselves, how they've been in the role, their prior career before they became Title IX coordinators, what it was. And then having that relationship with the superintendent and the principal where I was able to communicate with them about what Title IX was and where can we get information for it. That's when I started talking to my peers and telling them where they can talk to people about it, or if they were ever put in a certain situation where they can make this report for Title IX or talk to someone from Title IX to try and learn more. And then that's when people started to want to get more involved about what Title IX was. And then that's when I also told my teammates, and we all did that little research thing on it.
And I think it's really important to recognize that Dashara is very unusual. Most high school students do not know about Title IX. Most people don't know about Title IX. And one of the ways, or basically the only way that investigations are started into Title IX is somebody has to report something, which means they first have to know that Title IX is existing, and then they have to know that their situation has to do with Title IX. So it's a big ask. So thank you for that. Thank you for knowing about it. Another problem sort of related to what I just said is the lack of compliance in Title IX. And it's something like 80 to 90% of educational institutions are out of compliance with Title IX, which is a really big number. So Darlene, can you talk about your story that you told me this morning about the hockey team?
Sure. Prior to becoming the interim athletic director at UMass Boston, one of the things that that was an issue for us was we have a men's and women's ice hockey team. Locker rooms are beautiful. They are absolutely beautiful locker rooms. Having said all of that, our women's team actually did not have access to showers. So to actually shower after a game or shower after practice or whatever, what they needed to do was come out of their locker room, come into a common area space, go across the hall, and then go into other lockers where they have locker rooms that have showers in it.
Can I interrupt and just ask you to say what year this was?
This has been going on, I'm not sure how long, but I got there in 2018 and it was happening then. So once I became interim, well, I should back up. Prior to that, there was an issue because they were in the common area. And they said, well, the girls are coming out sometimes in just a towel, and that's a problem. So the solution to the problem was we're going to buy these beautiful terry cloth robes so that they can have those to go. When I became interim athletic director, I had built up a really good relationship with our vice president of administration and finance for the university. She was also a former student athlete, track athlete, and I told her about this particular issue, and she was appalled that this was happening, completely appalled. And so I'm really thankful that I was able to take it to someone that would hear my voice and say, let's do something about this, because I don't believe robes are the appropriate solution for that. The appropriate solution is, let's get them a shower. And so they did hire an architect so they can reconfigure. We also had an assessment done and so on and so forth. So lots of fantastic changes started happening to help bring the facilities up to par.
But from your perspective, why is compliance so difficult? Again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think compliance sometimes is difficult for a couple of reasons. Elizabeth said Tashara is unique, and I would say that even at the college level, she is very unique, and so she's going to be a game changer. Where you are and where you're going to be a game changer because your voice is extremely important. And I just felt like it was, our department was siloed off. And I don't think that's unusual for a lot of athletic departments where they tend to operate under the university's auspices, but they are their own private business to some degree. And so the decisions that they make within that athletic department doesn't sometimes go into the regular university atmosphere, and the university doesn't hear about a problem until it hits the newspaper. Having a collaborative relationship with the academic side of the house as well as the administrative side of the house of the university is extremely important. And being able to do that, I think helped open the door for those changes for the women's ice hockey team. Because like I said, they had a beautiful locker room. They raised the money for it to get this beautiful locker room. I would say the other locker rooms for our other female athletes had a lot to be desired. And the assessment showed that the women's locker rooms were actually smaller than the men's locker rooms. So they ended up not only having to fix getting showers for the women's hockey, but they're going to have to redo all of the locker rooms.
Does the federal government ever step in?
I wish. I mean, just by the mere number, the 90% of colleges and universities are not compliant says that they don't step in. What makes people do something is having a voice and having to keep saying certain things over and over until someone hears you. And so that's what's extremely important. And I think the celebration today about Title IX is, you know, let us clear our throats and keep talking. I know it's been 50 years and we may be a little hoarse at this point, but we need to keep talking and get some action moving or replace the people who won't hear us so that things can be different. Because I read the report from the Women's Sports Foundation who did an assessment on what has happened between this full 50 years. There's been beautiful strides because we couldn't probably be sitting up here if it wasn't for Title IX. But some of the numbers are horrendous when they talk about the first prong of proportionality and the fact that if girls and women truly have full access, the scholarship number that they would need is $741 million. That's how far behind we are in scholarship dollars for women. That's a lot of money. When Title IX started, I think it said that it was only 300,000 women interested in sports, and now it's over 3 million women that's interested in sport. So we're interested. We're interested. We need that 3 million now to all raise our voices to say, listen, enough is enough. Enough is enough.
Denise, you also were in leadership in sports, and your experiences are somewhat different.
They were. I can say that when back to coaching days, when I was coaching basketball, women's basketball in the early 80s, we did practice and play our games in our middle school. And then I left basketball and went on to coach more with track and field for 36 years. But I do know that the gentleman who followed me in coaching, who was very successful, Ron Michella, who went and took it to greater heights, but he also fought for the girls to be in the high school gym. And Barb, who played for Coach Michella, knows very well what he did to fight for women in ladies sports. So as I went on, I was thinking when we were having these conversations on the phone, Elizabeth, did I experience a lot of things that I was very uncomfortable with in relation to how our females were treated? And I can say as a coach, I do know that the weight room at times was definitely an issue. It used to be that we could be in there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and football and other sports had it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Then eventually they went to 5 days a week, prime time. And so I thought, you know what, I've got to solve this issue, and it's going to be find another place for our female athletes. So we did. We found another room. Whether that was right or wrong, we found another room off of the gym that we turned into, kind of called it our Lady Spartan weight room. And then, of course, we had other male sports who couldn't get into the large weight room, and they joined us as well. But we set up a rotating schedule so that the female sports weren't always in the evening, the 5 to 7 or 7 to 9, slot. And it worked out, very well. As far as when I had my time as athletic director at Boardman High School, which was only about 5.5 years, but as I said, I had taught and coached there for 35 years prior to that. I did not, I don't feel that I really had a lot of issues with how our females were treated. Other than the weight room, going back to how we practiced and played in the gym in the 80s, our leadership at our school, from our superintendent and principals on down, previous athletic directors before me, were very, very supportive of female athletes. Now, it definitely took some time. It definitely did. But some of our programs have produced some of the finest male and female people in sports here in Ohio, and we work together. Our coaching staffs work together for the most part, and I was telling Elizabeth, it was funny that when she asked me, did you really feel in that leadership position that you had many of those issues with women and maybe not having the same time frames and that, I felt a little disrespect, not from my own people in my own school, not from my own coaches, but when I went to a clinic, a track clinic, and as Elizabeth mentioned, Lori Gomez-Hennis was the nation's #1 runner in 1988, distance runner. And we were at a conference. Lori was already graduated from high school. She's coaching at NC State. And so we're down meeting with a lot of men, track and cross country coaches at this time. And so they're getting to know Lori. They all knew about Lori. And when we went around the room, they asked me, who I was. So I said, Denise Gorski, and well, what's your relationship with Lori? And I said, I coached her. And one gentleman at the table said, you coached Lori Gomez? And right away, I had that feeling of, yes, what's wrong with that? And my first inclination was, is that because I'm a woman? And I did experience that when I became athletic director, and again, not from my own people in my school. not from other fellow athletic directors that I work with in our area in Boardman, but when I went to a state clinic, and I was there, and we were again introducing each other around the table, and it was, I believe it was all men at the table and one female. And so I said, Denise Gorski, I'm athletic director at Boardman High School, and a man said, you're the athletic director at Boardman High School, Division I? So again, I just said, yes, I am, and I'm very proud of it. But a part of me wanted to say, why would you ask me that? You know, because I'm female. I just want to be known as, hopefully, a good athletic director.
Well, I think this is really interesting because one of the things I've noticed is that, and this goes to no federal oversight, is that there's a huge variety in the experiences that women athletes have, depending on who the superintendent is, who the principal is, you know, do the male folks that are in leadership, do they have daughters? You know, what is their experience? And so for me, this is one of the major problems, is there's just such a wide range of experiences that the women athletes are getting. And you mentioned coaching. So that is one of the big changes that happened with Title IX. So before Title IX passed, most, if not all, coaches of women's sports teams were females. And when it passed, almost immediately, that dropped to about 40%. And meanwhile, the coaches of all men's sports, we can pretty much say it's all men. Maybe it's 1 or 2%. So I was interested to hear, Tracy, about your experiences, because you did have some stellar coaching from Tara, and also sort of wrapped in that, I think is really important, the relationship that you had with your now husband, who brought you around to games around in Cleveland. And that was sort of an entryway as well.
That's exactly right. My husband, who was my best friend and is my best friend, we've known each other since we were about 10 years old. And we just loved playing basketball. We were best friends. That movie, Love and Basketball, somebody saw us in the neighborhood window playing, because that's our theme movie. But we used to play. He and his cousins used to take me around every place in the city of Cleveland to play basketball. I never had to ask for a pickup game. I never had to call winners. All I had to do was sit down, stretch, and tie my shoe, and they knew that I was on the team. So just when I was playing with them, it was a certain thing, not only to hone into my skills, but it was something in me that I was like, I cannot be the weak link. We cannot lose this game, and they blame it on we lost because we had a girl on the team. So because of that, I was able to do other things. You know, I honed in on my defense. I was a very good fundamental player. I did all the things. I did just everything so that we made sure that we won, and I wasn't going to be the weak link for that. And I think just having that experience all the time about playing in the best areas in Cleveland, all the time with men, definitely helped me play basketball. Tara Vanderveer recruited me. I think that she's an excellent coach. Hall of Fame coach, Olympic coach. She was one of the people that when you think about coaching and things that people say, I think she was a very strong advocate for women and women's sports and equality. I think that the things that she mentioned during my freshman year at Ohio State still stay with me today. I think that basketball and the experiences, as we all talked about, provided you with so many avenues that you wouldn't think about. I mean, so many desires and working for a common goal and having a work ethic to do things. So I just really enjoyed all of that.
When I was researching Tara, there was a story that I really loved, because she is older than I think all of us, and so very much pre-Title IX. And the story is that she bought the best basketball that she could afford, and if the guys wanted to play with that ball, they had to take her on the team as well. So I don't know, I love that about her.
Yeah, she really did some things like that, you know, and it's always different things that she did that you can remember, because she really wanted to be a very good coach and an inspiration to everyone. And I'm just thinking about, as we're talking, I remember that when I was in high school, it was some guy that wanted to play me in high school or something. And that same person, Lisa Gilbert, that I said something, you know, I'm just like, I can beat him, it's no big deal. And I was just playing basketball, and it didn't matter to me. I was like, she looked at me and she said, why didn't you beat him? I said, girl, I know I can beat him. I wasn't trying to, do anything. She said, don't you ever let a guy beat you again when you know that you can play against them and you can beat them. And I didn't understand it then, but then, through the years and when something happened, we talked about it. And I remember I had an opportunity again to play against a guy, and I definitely made sure that I won that time. So I just had to take that for heart.
So there are two things that about coaching or having women coaches that I think are important. One is certainly, the lack of opportunity for women who want to be coaches, but also the lack of representation. And so Denise, you had somebody who was a real inspiration for you when you were young, that was a woman.
Yes, I did. From 70 to 73, my high school physical education teacher and my basketball and softball coach was Laurel Shaw Montgomery from Cuyahoga Falls. And she instilled a desire in me to go on to pursue not just my teaching, my dream to coach. And when I first started coaching, there were many more women involved in coaching than there are today. And I know Elizabeth and I had talked about this. Why is there a lack of so many female coaches today? My own opinion, part of my opinion on that is there became that time of specialization of athletes. And you saw, I would say maybe 10 years ago in our area where more male and female athletes were specializing in one sport. I'm old school, I love that 2 and 3 sport athlete. It's healthier for them, number one. They're less likely to get hurt than they are if they concentrate on one sport. And we got away from that, a little bit. So what we've strived to do, even when I was there and not there, was we strive to have more of that representation. I think that also part of the reason why maybe there are some women who are not staying in the sports, obviously raising families and that, but that specialization that I go back to, I would hear women saying, it's become year-round. I just can't do it. I'm coaching volleyball and it's year-round for me. I've got to do club sports, I'm camping this summer, weightlifting, and I just don't have any downtime. And I will say that one thing that Boardman High School, the female coaches at Boardman High School have just done, which I think is a fantastic program, is all of the female coaches got together and said, let's have a strength training, and we're going to call it Lady Spartan Strength. And we're going to allow every female athlete in every sport to join this for free. We're not going to have anybody paid for it. We're going to go out and get sponsors so they have a different shirt 3 days a week to wear of the school colors. And they all take turns in that weight room so that there's not a coach who, again, feels like I'm there every day. I'm there 6 days a week all year long. And you should see the number. 130 young ladies have done that. And if you'd go in the weight room, the main weight room, and see column after column of these young ladies all in the same shirt, Lady Spartan Strength, it's really inspiring. And the TV stations have been covering that. And it's not only, a way to help alleviate maybe a little bit of the time for the coaches, but also for those female athletes to get together, meet each other, and start supporting each other more and go back to that 2 and 3 sport athlete.
I think what you're talking about is exactly right, in the sense that I think one of the things that moving forward regarding Title IX that we need to really think about is allyship. That is going to be extremely important to move the needle. And when I say allyship, I'm not just talking about our male counterparts. If you look at the statistics surrounding the benefits of Title IX, our BIPOC community has gotten less of those benefits. So just as women, we need to kind of change the language and say, we're talking about all women. We're not just talking about Black women, and we're not just talking about white women or Hispanic. We're talking about all women, and all of us need to kind of rally together to kind of help this. Because when they start also looking at access, they're finding that there is less access at the high school level. There's less support at the high school level. So where are you going to get these kids that are going to come through college if we're not supporting them in high school? The other thing in terms of allyship, coaches are important, but athletic directors hire coaches. And the bulk of athletic directors at the high school and college level are male. You need more representation in administrative positions so that you can begin to try to create the pipeline that we're talking about and demand that the scholarship dollars be equal, that the facilities be what you need to do and to compete. Those kind of things are important. So I would say first, we need to start in this room and let us all be allies together so that we can absolutely change the needle, because it's possible. I'm on the soapbox.
No, you know what? We are on the same wavelength, because my next question was to you to talk about what do we need to do in the future. Do you want to add anything to go forward? What do we need to change? Where do we need to look for change?
Well, I absolutely think part of it, here's one of our changers right here. I think she's going to do a tremendous job because she hasn't got a chance to tell a story that I think should be told. But I think those kind of things, it starts with that and us using our voices and demanding action once we use them. I think that is something that's extremely important. And one of the things that I think sometimes happens when you need to make change, you're rattling some boats here that people are not going to like. And so you're going to need allies to kind of help keep you steady so that you can keep moving the ship. And so I think that's why it's really important for us to not have even the separation within Title IX, that this particular group is getting more of the Title IX benefits than this particular group. And we're all women. That to me makes zero sense. And so to me, the first step is getting our ship in order internally. And then we need to take over the world.
Well, Deshara, from your perspective, what do we need to do? What issues are important to you? What parts of Title IX are important? What parts, what do you want to say to all of us that we need to work on?
So I think, kind of based off my opinion and the opinion of my peers, I think the first thing we want to work on is like Darlene said, kind of work on getting the equality based on the groups. Even if we're all women, it's like based off the groups of whether race, age, and gender, get those places of equality balanced and not one gets more benefits than the other. Also making people more aware of Title IX. It's like you said, not many people know. So that should be like another step of ours. Make people more aware of this law, of the situation, so they know what is going on around them. Because with the pandemic, everything is like blowing up in our faces with the toilet paper and the paper towel shortages and the bleach wipe shortages and the food shortages, prices raising for gas. It's like we need to be aware of these things that are happening around us. And if we're talking about sports and like in the education system, let's be more aware about Title IX, because not many of us know.
So we're going to open up soon for Q&A, but before we do, does anyone on the panel want to say anything before we close? Did I miss something?
I would just like to say that, Tracy, when we had our Zoom call the other day, and we were talking about, in regards to girls basketball, how can some of the sports not play on the same days that they typically do. For example, women's basketball in high school is on Wednesday and Saturdays for most leagues, and the men's are on Tuesday and Friday. So of course their spectator base is much higher. So what we were discussing a little bit is a couple years ago, we had tried one night where we had a spaghetti dinner fundraiser. We had not quite a double header, I guess you'd call it a quad header, but we had the girls JV go first and the boys than the girls' varsity and the boys' varsity. Had a wonderful, wonderful crowd. But we also discussed in our league trying to go maybe every 2 weeks, that the men would play on Tuesday, Friday, women on Wednesday, Saturday, and then we would flip it. And we were hoping that maybe that was something that could, help generate more people coming in for the women's basketball. But it's kind of tough. You're still fighting college football on Saturdays. So, unfortunately, I don't think in many areas that has really happened where it does flip like that. But I think there are ways that we can make more spectators come to female sports and other sports that don't generate a lot of spectators as well. And I just think that there needs to be more research there, or more, not research, but more exploration of what we can do to get those numbers up of people attending.
Well, that's a good point for me to say that Tennis in the Land is coming to Jacobs Pavilion from August, I think it's August 20th to 27th. And I went last year, NAUSA went last year, and it was fantastic. Like all women's sports, you get amazing seats, super, super, super close to all the action. I couldn't believe the strength of the legs of the women, and I was right there to see it. So please, please, everyone, buy tickets, go. Let's fill the seats and show Cleveland that we care about women's sports, that we will show up to events. And to wrap things up, Tracy, what do you think we need to do going forward?
I think having conversations like this, the awareness, as everyone talked about, and just everyone educating someone else. If you hear someone saying something or talking about them, just maybe educate them, provide an alliance, and just keep the discussion going. Just because we've come so far in this 50 years doesn't mean that it needs to stop at this time. Just keep pushing that needle and keep striving for more.
Thank you.
We've got elected officials in the House, and we talked about the fact that there's 90% of colleges and universities that are not compliant. You guys need potentially to start holding them accountable, because you get one or two of those where they get called on the carpet, everybody's going to scramble and get it together.
So we're going to now open it to Q&A. I think we have a mic runner. Are you the mic runner?
I had no idea that you can actually work in sport. I had zero idea. I went to Eastern Michigan University and I majored in public law and government. I thought I was going to be an attorney. But I always loved sport. I came from a sport family. My mom has her golf outfit on over there. Everybody in my family plays some kind of sport, and so that was something that was big for me. So I just love the administration part of it. As many athletes as there are in my family, I am not one of them. I am very clumsy, hence the boot that I have here. But I fell into it by accident. I started trying to make a way for myself to get involved administratively in sport. So the first couple positions I had in sport, I actually created myself. So when I went to the MAC, I volunteered and created a position for myself there. I created a position for myself that still exists at the NACTA, which is the National Association of Directors of Athletics. And then when I went to the Patriot League, it was a newly created position. I didn't have anything to do with it, but I was the first one to be their director of championships and operations. So it's about, for me, it was really about, this is something I want to do. I'm really passionate about it. It is really important to get my voice out there in this particular space, is how I did it.
I had thought about wanting to be an athletic director probably midway through my career coaching and teaching, but the opportunity just didn't come. And at the time it did come, I wasn't ready to leave coaching. And it wasn't just the young ladies that I had coming back. They were very strong, but I was just enjoying it so much I thought, I don't know that I want to take that direction. So when I retired in 2013, my husband and I both retired with 35 years of teaching, and he also was a coach. There was a phone call while we're on the beach, at Myrtle Beach, and asking me if I would be the interim athletic director, that our present athletic director was going to be off for a little bit, and eventually he did retire. So in December, they offered me, well, they wanted to offer me a 10-year contract, and I said, no, I can't do that right now. And I took a 3-year contract. But the one thing I will remember, and actually took another 3-year contract after that, I remember being called to the high school and asked if I would consider taking this position, and had a conversation with the principal at that time. And I said, you know, to him, I've always wanted to do this, but I'm retired. My husband's retired. You know, this is the time for us to go. I went home that night, and just as you had said about the men need, you know, to get behind us, and believe me, that many of them do, my husband was truly behind me, because we sat there and I said, Dan, I don't know what to do. And he said, I know you've always wanted to do this. You owe it to yourself to go and be the interim athletic director. Little did he know I was going to end up in it for 5.5 years, but he was so supportive of me continuing to do it. And so that's how, you know, my path got to be an athletic director. Looking back at it, I would have loved to have done that job for 10 or 15 years, and I think I could have. The burnout rate for high school athletic directors, they say, is now 5 years, 5 to 10 years, I should say. And, you know, I loved it, and I wish I had had the opportunity maybe to do it longer, but I'm glad that I had an opportunity to do it at all.
I would add that this is why representation is so important. I mean, I think if you're a man, you don't realize, like, your vision is everywhere. And for women, that's not always the case. And so if you don't see, I mean, the old adage, if you don't see it, you can't be it. And I think that is so much more important, so much more critical than we all acknowledge.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our event this evening. On behalf of Charter Communications Spectrum, Director Williams, Senior Regional Director Jason Kirshner here in the front, and our Group Vice President, Gary Underwood. We thank you all for attending this evening. Thank you, NAUSA. I hope that this is going to be the start of a long relationship. You guys have been amazing to work with. Everyone, thank you so much for your attendance. You could be 1,000,001 places, but you chose to be here with us this evening, and we are grateful for that.